The battle that saved China, Red Cliffs Inferno. 208 AD, the river runs black with masts. Winter presses on the Yangtze. A northern warlord drives an armada down a waterway he barely understands, boasting of 800,000 men. Across the current, two southern rivals stare at each other and at fate, knowing that if they fail, the Han world shatters. There is one detail too easy to miss. Midwinter should bring northerly winds, but for days a warm south wind rises, steady and strange, pushing smoke and sails upriver. In several dozen fire-laden hulks lies a decision that will burn a path into legend. Why did the river seem to choose a side? Who would dare strike the match, knowing a single misstep would doom them all? Hold that breath. The answer waits in the dark water between chained decks and sleeping soldiers. River of decision begin with the sound of timbers breathing. Each wave strikes a hull and answers back. Night presses low, and the Yangtze moves as if it knows more than men do. On its northern bank, a line of masts knits the horizon into a single dark thread. Lanterns bob. Drums knock. A commander who rose from clerk to conqueror stares at the current and tries to hear his own future in it. Cao Cao does not blink. His letters called it necessity. The empire needs one spine, not a sack of bones. He has crushed northern coalitions, lifted cities by the roots, and dragged them behind him. Now the river blocks the last open door. The south will either bow or break. Yet here on water his strength feels heavy. Horses stamp uselessly on transports. Archers cough. The very board smell of unfamiliar rot and riverweed. He orders the ships chained side by side to still the rolling that sickens his army. The chain rattles once, then holds, stability, or something like it. Downstream, the night is warmer than it should be. A soft south wind pushes against the season, a quiet hand at the small of the back. In the marsh-shadowed camps of the south, men wrap cloaks tighter against damp air and listen for the future in frogs and distant oars. Son Quan, young and watchful, feels the weight of inheritance press between his shoulders. He did not ask for this river, this war, or the ghost of his father's command. He has it anyway. Beside him, the veteran Admiral Zhou Yu stands like a drawn bow. Beauty and calculation live easily in his face. He hears the wind and files it away like a blade. To the west, under canvas patched too many times, Liu Bei's people cluster around small fires. Their leader, gentle at the eyes and iron in the wrists, is a man the empire has tried to swallow more than once. He knows flight better than triumph. A child cries. A mother hushes, thinking of tomorrow's crossing. Among them, a visitor in a feather fan watches sparks climb into fog. Zhuge Liang, called the sleeping dragon, rarely speaks first. He lets silence do the heavy lifting. When he finally does speak, it is not to predict victory. It is to insist upon possibility. They all know the ledger. Cao Cao has numbers and momentum. The South has rivercraft, local lungs, and a hatred of northern arrogance that can carry a spear farther than muscle. But hatred alone cannot chain men together. The alliance will either exist now, here, or never. A courier arrives wet to the knees, bearing the smell of reed banks and haste. His words are plain, and yet they hit the camp like cold water. Cao Cao has moved closer. His ships breathe and breathe, a whole forest set on its side. He believes the South will break apart at his approach, that old rivalries will open like old wounds. He counts on history, on human nature, on men choosing comfort over courage. His calculation is correct, just often enough to be dangerous. Zhou Yu invites Zhuge Liang to his pavilion and offers rice wine that tastes of smoke. The two study maps that lie like rumors across the table. The admiral's hand rests lightly on a bend of the river. He is strong on land, he says softly. But the water does not love him. Zhuge Liang turns his fan once, thinking of wind, of rope, of fear. He speaks of sickness in the northern ranks of horses that cannot find their feet on deck, of officers who will not admit they are dizzy. He does not smile, because it is not yet time to smile. In another tent, son Quan listens to an older general who served his father. The man urges caution, the kind that looks like survival and tastes like humiliation. Retreat upriver. Wait and watch. Preserve your strength. The young lord holds his breath long enough to feel it burn. He understands the wisdom. He also understands what it would do to the South's spine. He thinks of his older brother, dead too soon. He thinks of the people who cannot retreat, farmers, boatmen, children. If the river is a god, it accepts no prayers from those who run. Son Quan stands. We face him, he says. We do not beg him. This is the first payoff. The alliance does not dissolve under the shadow of the northern masts. It hardens. Son Quan does not flinch. Liu Bei does not flee. Between them, an agreement forms with a quiet click of a blade entering a scabbard. War is chosen not because men love it, but because sometimes the road to peace runs straight through fire. If moments like this seize youth at instant when history stops dithering and finally decides stay with this story. If you want more turning points where a single choice tilts a continent, make sure you're with us each time a match is struck and a river takes sides. Across the water, Cao Cao orders more links added to the chains. He walks the planked alleyways between decks and tells seasick men to imagine fields. Imagine earth that does not move. He believes the chain solves the problem. He does not yet see what else it creates. In the southern camp, a different conversation ignites. Not about courage now, but about craft. Fire or steel. Ambush or duel. Zhou Yu draws the river again with a nail in the table's wax, marking eddies and lee shores where a ship might pretend to drift and yet hold its course. He asks for a man who can endure pain without flinching, a soldier whose loyalty sits deeper than blood. The name that rises is Huang Gai. He is not handsome. He is not young. He has a back like the keel of a boat and a face the river respects. The admiral speaks to him without poetry. The plan will call him a traitor before it crowns him a savior. He must offer himself to the enemy in a theater of pain convincing enough to fool every eye, including friendly ones. Huang Gai looks at his hands. There are calluses already, scars like pale river stones under his skin. He does not ask for guarantees because such coins do not exist in war. He nods once. Duty is heavier than water. Word of strange preparations moves quietly, a rumor carried in buckets and a long rope. Pitch is checked, bundles gathered. A boatwright, who has never cared who rules the land so long as wood pays, is asked to make vessels that will die effectively. He agrees because it is work, because it is an honor, because he is afraid to say no. Men who will ride those vessels write letters to wives and brothers by bad light. They put them into oilskins. They do not say the words, in case. Zhuge sits with Liu Bei and speaks not as an advisor, but as a mirror. We must lend the South our strength without owning it, he says. If we try to take the helm, we will be thrown overboard. If we refuse to row, we will drown anyway. Liu Bei's hands tighten on his knees. He has lost too much to pride. He will not lose this. He promises 100 small things that seem like nothing and will later prove everything. Boats, men, time, silence. Wind strokes the river again, warm and sure. In a shrine tucked under canvas, a handful of sailors bow to a painted goddess with river weeds in her hair. They ask for mercy and for good timing, and then, a little embarrassed, for a wind that holds through the 11th month. Outside, a boy listens. He will never know if his prayer matters. He will still tell the story as if it did. Cao Cao receives reports of fever. He reassigns men from the sick boats. He writes orders that pretend sickness cannot cross a chain. A physician begs for more ginger, more dried plums, a shoreline's worth of herbs. The commissary notes grow shorter. When he sleeps, the commander dreams of fields that move too fast, of earth that shakes under his horse's hooves. He wakes with a headache and calls for music. A court musician plays thin notes that vanish in the damp air. Cao Cao listens anyway, because he understands that morale is a kind of armor no smith can make. At dawn, the river shows one of its true faces, patient, implacable, amused. Mist pads the distance. A single duck wakes up the whole bank. Oilskins are checked. The admiral's eyes glitter like wet stone. He walks the line of small boats that will pretend to surrender. He says very little, because the right kind of silence pulls men together better than speeches. Wang Gai salutes, a crisp movement that ends like a vow. Across the way, scouts in the Northern Fleet report unusual calm, unusual order, unusual courage among the enemy. Their captain laughs too quickly and calls it bravado. Reports have the lifespan of mayflies in a war this large. Cao Cao glances over them and circles one phrase. South wind persists. He writes nothing beside it. He does not need to. He has already begun to plan his triumphal entrance into the southern capital. He sees himself adored for ending chaos, the empire wrapped tight like silk around a single waist. Ambition is not a sin here. It is a heat source. It cooks the food and sometimes burns the house. Zhou Yu meets Zhuge Liang at the river's edge. The two men are polite in a way that feels like fencing. If we live, the admiral says, we will disagree about many things. If we live, Zhuge Liang replies, we will have earned that right. For a moment, they listen not to each other, but to the water knocking at mud, a steady heartbeat no drum can match. The first test is not fire, but trust. Son Quan must send vessels and men to someone he has not yet watched win. Liu Bei must commit to a plan that gives the credit to another banner. Zhou, you must accept a suggestion from a mind that often walks one step ahead and never shows the footprints. Wang Gai must endure a beating he asked for. The lash will whistle. Blood will be public. Men will turn away and then turn back because they understand that sometimes theater saves more lives than honesty. The staging begins. A letter is drafted that reads like betrayal and tastes like medicine. Its words offer service to the north, as if the south were falling apart. It will travel ahead of the fireships and soften suspicion into arrogance. The river holds its breath. Oars skim. Pitch fumes bite the night. Somewhere ahead, a chain hums like a low, satisfied animal. Zhou Yu forces his own breath to match the water's slow pulse. He has learned that men obey what his face permits. Tonight, his face allows nothing but calm. Lantern light touches his cheekbones and leaves without a claim. He studies the current the way a gambler studies another man's hands, searching for tremor. For a tell on the lee shore, Zhuge Liang counts heartbeats with the edge of his fan. 3 for the men who will go and might not return. 1 for the wind that has no business being kind. Another for the risk he advised and cannot control once it moves. He keeps his eyes on the reeds, where they bow in the same direction as the hope in his chest. Wang Gai sits low in the lead boat. The lash marks under his tunic throb with each sway. He adjusts the oilskin parcel at his hip, the letter he wrote to his son in a hand unsteady from blood loss. He imagines the boy opening it in a good year, somewhere with bread, not smoke. A quiet laugh escapes him when he realizes he did not sign his name. He sealed it with his breath instead. The boats drift with an innocence that border guards welcome and veterans don't trust. Northern sentries lean over rails, bored first, then curious, then smug. The traitor story has already crossed their decks like a rumor with warm hands. A watch officer, older than the commander who named him, spits in the river and waves permission. He thinks of the speech he will deliver when these Southerners kneel on shore, where arrows sleep in bundles like snakes. Men trade glances to Frank to be called discipline. Son Quan stands between two torches and looks smaller than his rank demands, younger than the fear on his commander's faces. He closes his eyes and hears his mother telling him how his father handled storms. Let the deck pitch. Keep your feet soft, bend your knees, never fight the water. He opens his eyes and orders no more torches. Let the dark make us honest, he says. There is yet a debt to collect before the river burns. And it is collected on a different fog-bound morning. 2 days earlier, when the alliance feels fresh and brittle. The South needs arrows. Zhuge Liang offers to borrow them from the North in 3 nights, a promise so clean it feels like an insult. Zhou Yu agrees with a smile that shows bones. He assigns a handful of crews, a dozen straw-stuffed screens, and boats with hulls that know the reeds better than any general. The fog that morning is a blanket even birds won't tear. Drums in the Northern Fleet do not stir. Voices do. The raiders glide in close, not to board, but to taunt. They beat gongs and shout insulting poetry that would embarrass their mothers if anyone could see their faces. Panic has a sound. So does pride. Arrows lift and fly. The straw men grow hedgehog spines, quivering. The boats lean, heavy now with gifts. Zhuge Liang waits until a captain orders archers to cease, then calls cheerfully into the white curtain, thanks them for their generosity, and turns the boats. He returns with 10,000 barbs to each side of each raft, a harvest of impatience. He lays the bundled arrows at Zhou Yu's feet as if he were returning borrowed cups. The admiral's smile is the same shape, but warmer now. A small trust is earned. A little frost melts off the alliance. This is the turn the story deserved and got. A plan that gathers enemy strength without spilling one mouthful of blood. If your pulse jumped when fog swallowed the boats and spat them back out, bristling, tell someone who would have held their breath beside you. Moments like this stitch strangers into a single audience. Back in the present dark, okay, there is no fog, only a strip of river that believes in acting. The surrender boats come inside the range where a wrong word becomes a wound. A northern officer calls for the leader. Huang Gai rises with a slowness that can be read as humility or pain. He bows like a traitor and offers a voice that shakes with the right kind of shame. The officer nods, satisfied by suffering. He gives the ritual order to secure the newcomers. The chained city opens a mouth. Huang Gai glances once at the wind line. The straw tassel tied to the bow points upriver, stubborn and constant. He meets the eyes of the boy who will cut the first tether. The boy nods, mouth dry. He has never been seen by so many men and felt so invisible. Behind them, torches crouch under damp cloth, sucking thin air, waiting for one sharp breath to become blaze. Cao Cao is awake because he sleeps like a cat in enemy country. Reports stack. He leafs through them as if they were a playbill, and tonight's performance is already known. Sickness down to 1 boat in 5. Morale improved by music on the hour. South wind continues. He writes a single character in the margin, the one that means inevitability. He does not underline it. One of his aides asks whether to bring the surrendering boats in closer or hold them at a respectful distance. Welcome them, he says, and imagines heads bowing like wheat. On the southern bank, Zhou Yu's jaw tightens. Even at this distance, he can sense the pause he asked for, cresting toward him. He lifts a hand, but does not wave. Orders, once launched, are like arrows. You can wish them wider. You can pray them lower. But they love what they were born to love. Zhuge Liang's fan does not move now. He holds it still as if any motion might distract the wind from its simple duty. He knows there are stories that will credit prayer, others that will credit calculation. He would prefer the truth that both are crutches for the same broken. Bridgemen must cross in darkness. A shout splits the pretense. A northern sailor, sharper than his officer, notices tar sheen where surrender boats should be clean. He leans, sees the thicker ropes, the bundles lashed low. His mouth opens around the word fire, but calls it too soon. The boy cuts the first tether. The boats kiss the chain city's teeth. Huang Gai tears away the damp cloth. Flame inhales and grows tall. Torches drop like seeds into oil. The river blooms orange. Men on the northern decks cheer for a heartbeat because victory has a habit of wearing every face first. Then the heat hits. The cheer dies. The climax comes on a draft of wind as sure as a hand to the back of the neck. Flame leaps the seams and finds the pitch, the rope, the dreams of men who packed too tight to steady their stomachs. The chained decks, so sensible an hour ago, share everything now. Shock, smoke, panic. A captain screams for axes to cut the links. Another orders water which boils in the buckets before it can arc out. Horses shriek. Their hooves swing wild hammers that smash ribs and rails. A drummer, determined to beat courage into timbers, keeps time until his drumhead tightens from heat and splits like a confession. Huang Gai's boat is already an oven. He does not ask it to last. He jumps on the count he chose in daylight, not the count fear suggests. He hits water hard enough to knock the prayer out of him. Two hands snag his collar and drag him toward a low eddy where fire is only a reflection. He spits black. He is not done. He will not be done until the chain sings a different tune. Cao Cao reaches the deck in time to see a string of his fleet become a single, roaring line. The chain he ordered for steadiness now holds his fortune in place while it cooks. He bellows to cut the links, a command that must pass through fire to be heard. Men hack at iron with axes made for wood. Sparks laugh. On the far end, a crew finally severs a link. The sudden release yanks another section sideways, piling hull against hull, fanning flame with their own panic. It is a twist only the river could write. The first success makes the failure worse. Zhou Yu watches not for spectacle, but for patterns. Where are the gaps? Where will the wind herd the blaze next? He sends skiffs to strike at flanking transports before they can flee and regroup downstream. He's thinking like water now, not like land fast, opportunistic, indifferent to glory. He points with two fingers, and men move as if those fingers were their own. Zhuge Liang listens for sound beneath sound. The higher pitch, that means ropes, tightening. The low groan, that means a deck about to fold. The human silence that falls when flame wins without argument. He does not smile. He lets one thought bloom and die in his head. Even victory at this scale corrupts. He will spend years paying for what is bought tonight, on a narrow passage between firewalls of ships. A northern officer tries to make a stand because that is what his father taught him men do when gods leave the room. He plants his spear and holds his staircase line against two boats, then 5, then none, because there is nothing left to climb. He throws the spear into water more out of courtesy than hope, so another man won't step on it. He follows it down, armor heavy as regret. Arrows find new uses. They are torches, ladders, bridges for flame. One catches in a sail that slumps, catches in a beard that flashes. Catches in a cache of oil the quartermaster stored exactly where the manual said not to. Manuals burn like anything else when the wind insists. Son Quan stands too close to the bank. Spray speckles his face with river ash. A guard tries to tug him back and earns a look that freezes his hand. The young lord needs to see the thing they chose. He needs to carry the sound of chain, the smell of pitch, the the sight of men shoving comrades into boats that aren't there. He files it where his future will find it again and again, somewhere within that inferno. A messenger who carried the false letter is pinned under a fallen spar. He laughs because fate has a sense of humor. He told so many men what to say, and now no one can hear him. He stops laughing when he notices the water climbing his chest. He whispers a line from a poem he only half remembers. Chains, fevers, and a south wind. The wind changes everything. It begins softly, a whisper under canvas, a ripple through sleeping banners. Then, like a god inhaling, it grows. It pushes, steady and sure, across the black water. The fire ships drift with perfect obedience, as if the river itself carries vengeance in its arms. Zhou Yu watches from the southern bank. His eyes never leave the moving lights, faint orange dots growing brighter with every breath of wind. Each ship seems harmless, drifting like lost souls. Behind him, the army holds its breath. No drum beats. No voice dares break the silence. And on the northern side, Cao Cao's fleet, his proud chained city of wood, waits in calm ignorance. Lanterns glow warm, crews half asleep. The commanders laugh over rice wine, mocking the South's desperation. When the first of the defector ships appears, a watch officer squints, then smiles. Our victory delivers itself. He says no one notices the glint of tar. No one hears the faint hiss of oil seeping through cracks. Only the river knows. Huang stands at the bow of the lead ship. Body wrapped in bandages, face calm as stone. The lash scars on his back burn in rhythm with the torch he holds. A man dies once, he whispers to himself. Let it be useful. Behind him, his men wait for the signal, torches hidden under damp cloth. They have already accepted that they will not live to see the sun. The signal comes as a gust, sudden, strong, and perfect. Huang Gai tears away the cloth and thrusts his torch into the sky. For an instant, nothing happens. Then the world explodes. Flame leaps like a beast freed from chains. Oil ignites in rivers across the decks. The air howls with heat. The fire ships, now burning from within, rush forward faster as their ropes burn through. They crash into the northern hulls with a roar that shakes the banks. Men scream, too late. Sparks leap from sail to sail, carried by the same south wind that had seemed so gentle hours before. Within minutes, the grand northern fleet becomes a floating inferno. Zhou Yu closes his eyes. His voice trembles between awe and terror. Heaven fights for us. Zhuge Lang, standing beside him, does not speak. He watches the flames dance, fierce, merciless, alive, and knows that heaven fights for no one. It simply follows nature. Cao Cao bursts from his tent, barefoot, armor half-fastened. The night is red and alive. His fleet, his masterpiece, burns like a funeral pyre, stretching to the horizon. The chained decks that once promised stability now doom every ship to the same fire. The ropes hold, refusing mercy. Every order he gives dies in the roar. Cut the chains, he shouts. Cut them before we all die. But the axes cannot move fast enough. Fire leaps from one deck to the next, turning commands into screams. Horses panic, tearing through soldiers. Oil barrels explode, flinging fragments of burning wood high into the night. Cao Cao's men throw themselves into the river, choosing drowning over fire. The water glows orange from below, boiling near the flames. The air itself feels alive, hot, violent. Merciless, a single burning mast collapses across 3 ships, breaking the chain at last, but too late. The fleet has already become one vast pyre. From the southern side, Zhou Yu gives the final order. Now, strike. The southern fleet, waiting in silence, surges forward. War drums erupt, echoing like thunder. Arrows hiss through smoke. The wind, still blowing northward, drives both fire and fury straight into Cao Cao's remaining line in the chaos. Huang Gai's ship, consumed by flame, crashes into the enemy flagship. He leaps overboard moments before the explosion. The shockwave throws him into the black water. When he surfaces, half the river is fire and half is bodies. He clings to a plank, coughing blood and smoke. His eyes, still bright through the soot, watch the horizon. "If this saves the South," he murmurs, "then let the river keep my name." On the burning decks, Cao Cao fights to restore command. He strikes down a deserter himself, rage barely masking fear. Every breath scalds his throat. Every step burns through the soles of his boots. Yet even as the flames consume his fleet, he refuses to surrender. Form ranks on the shore. He bellows. "The river is lost, but the land still bows to me." His officers obey, dragging survivors onto the banks, reforming units in the shadow of annihilation. Their armor steams, their faces ghost white with ash. Cao Cao looks once more at the blazing water and whispers, "So this is what defeat smells like." Zhou Yu lands with his strike force, blades drawn. The air is thick with heat and victory. The northern soldiers, disoriented and broken, try to rally but collapse under the southern charge. For every man Zhou Yu cuts down, 3 surrender. The admiral's armor glows from the reflected firelight, his eyes like burning coals. But even amid triumph, his voice is grim. No mercy. Not yet. The river will remember who set it ablaze. A volley of arrows rains down from the shoreline. Cao Cao's last guard holds, long enough for their lord to escape inland. The admiral sees the shadow of the northern commander vanish into the smoke. His blade stills mid-air. "He's gone," he says. Zhuge Liang, emerging from the haze, answers quietly. The fire killed his fleet, not his ambition. By dawn, the Yangtze is unrecognizable. Charred masts jut from the water like bones. The wind has softened again, as if ashamed of what it carried. Survivors crawl ashore, coughing up soot and river water. The South has won, yet no one cheers. Zhou Yu stands at the edge of the shore. The victory weighs heavy. "How many of ours?" he asks. An officer shakes his head. "Too many to count." The admiral nods slowly. "Then let history count for us." Zhuge Liang joins him, fan closed, face unreadable. "The battle saved China," he says softly. "But it also changed it. Every flame that burned tonight will cast a shadow over the next century." The admiral looks across the ruined water. "And what of the man who escaped?" Zhuge Liang smiles faintly. Cao Cao burns slower than wood. The fire is still chasing him, only now it lives inside. Behind them, Huang Gai's body is dragged from the shallows. He's barely breathing. When Zhou Yu kneels beside him, the old warrior opens one eye and manages a rasping laugh. "Did it work?" The admiral grips his hand. "The river burns still, old friend." Huang Gai exhales, not quite a sigh, not quite a smile, and lets the river have him once more. Zhou Yu stands. "Honor him," he orders. Every man who fed the fire with his life, the soldiers bow as the sun rises red through the smoke, a sun that looks more like an ember than a blessing. And then, silence. The battle is over, but not finished, because somewhere beyond the rising haze, Cao Cao rides hard for the northern hills, eyes wide and wild, whispering to himself. "The wind betrayed me. The river lead." He looks back once, sees the smoke curling like a serpent into the sky, and swears he will return. The South has saved China for now. But the empire has only begun to break, and as the wind dies for the first time in days, a whisper ripples through the scorched water, not of victory, but of warning. The night the water caught fire, the river still smolders. Smoke drifts like ghosts, refusing to leave the battlefield. the sun climbs weakly through the haze, revealing what victory truly costs. Bodies tangled with debris, armor fused to ash, the silence after thunder. Zhou Yu stands ankle-deep in the soot-black water, staring at the wreckage. Around him, the survivors whisper that heaven favored the south. He doesn't answer. He knows better. Heaven doesn't choose sides. It only chooses balance. He closes his eyes and listens. Beneath the hiss of dying embers, he can still hear it, the echo of chains snapping. The sound that turned war into legend, but across the horizon, the faint rhythm of hooves breaks through. Cao Cao lives. Cao Cao's escape is a miracle born of madness. His armor is scorched, his men scattered, but his will, that iron spine that held half of China, refuses to bend. With a few thousand survivors, he rides through the marshland north of Wulin, away from the cursed river. Every gust of smoke behind him feels like pursuit. His generals urge him to rest. "We can rebuild," one pleads. "The south cannot chase us far." Cao Cao turns his bloodshot eyes toward the smoldering river. "You think this is over?" This, he gestures to the fire, is just a wound. Wounds teach better than victories. He spurs his horse onward. The ground beneath him sinks with every stride, the marsh swallowing hooves. The retreat is chaos disguised as order, wagons mired in mud, soldiers coughing from smoke, the air heavy with rot and shame. At dusk, the wind dies completely. The night feels wrong to still, to listening. In the southern camp, Zhou Yu walks among the wounded. He stops at every stretcher, every broken body that bore his orders into fire. Faces blackened beyond recognition, eyes open but empty. He kneels once before the ashes of Huang Gai. The old warrior's sword lies beside him, warped by heat. Zhou Yu touches the hilt. "You set the fire," he whispers. "Now I must stop it from spreading." Behind him, Zhuge Liang watches. His fan moves slowly, stirring only dust. "The river's gift is cruel," he says softly. "It saves kingdoms and kills peace in the same breath." Zhou Yu straightens. Cao Cao lives. Until he doesn't, there's no peace worth saving. Their gazes meet, two minds too alike to trust. In that quiet moment, an invisible tension hums between them, as sharp as the chain that once bound ships together. They both understand what the other thinks. Victory belongs to whoever history remembers. The next morning, scouts return with grim news. Cao Cao heads north along the marsh road. He burns villages as he retreats. The land itself seems to choke him, but he doesn't stop. Zhou Yu's hand curls into a fist. Then the fire follows him. He turns to Sun Quan's envoys. "We pursue." Zhuge Liang interjects gently. "A wounded beast is most dangerous when cornered. The river gave us victory, but the land will not be so kind. Let him crawl home with his shame and rot from it." Zhou Yu's eyes narrow and give him time to heal. No, the empire must see the north humbled, permanently. Sun Quan hesitates. His commanders look to him for a verdict. Between two geniuses, even the ruler's word feels borrowed. "Zhou Yu commands the fleet," he says, finally. He decides the pursuit. Zhuge Liang bows too smoothly. "Then may the admiral's courage outlast the wind." The admiral nods once. "It will." By nightfall, the pursuit begins. The southern fleet moves upriver, torches dimmed. The air reeks of burnt pitch and iron. Soldiers row in silence, haunted by what they've seen, driven by what remains undone. Zhou Yu's reflection wavers in the black water, proud, exhausted, haunted. His second-in-command approaches quietly. "Admiral, if we push any farther, the men will collapse." Zhou Yu doesn't look away from the water. "The men can rest when the empire does." Miles ahead, Cao Cao's army struggles through a stretch of swamp. Horses sink to their knees, carts overturn, Armor drags men down. Fever spreads through the ranks. Soldiers abandon banners to save their lives. The smell of decay hangs heavy. Cao Cao rides at the front, eyes hollow. He doesn't see soldiers anymore, only instruments. They think the South beat me, he mutters. They think I fled. He grips the reins tighter. I decide when I lose. One of his officers coughs, voice trembling. My lord, the men are dying in the mud. Cao Cao smiles faintly. Then they'll feed the road home. Back at the river, a storm gathers. The air thickens, sky bruised purple. Thunder rolls, slow, deliberate. The flames that once ruled the water are now nothing but embers. Zhou Yu stands beneath the first drops of rain. It feels like mockery, heaven washing away the evidence before history dries the ink. He turns to Zhou, who has come to watch the storm. You wanted patience, Zhou Yu says. But storms don't wait for patience. Zhou opens his fan, lets the rain tap its paper ribs. Storms pass, he says. Rivers remember. I prefer the company of memory. The admiral studies him, eyes sharp. You speak like a man writing history already. Zhou smile is thin. Someone must. Days pass. The pursuit drags on through the marshes. The South loses men to fever and exhaustion, the same way the North does. The river becomes their only lifeline, a god that demands constant sacrifice. Zhou Yu's body weakens. His chest aches from an old wound reopened by smoke and rain. He hides it from his men, but not from Zhou, who notices everything. When Zhou Yu collapses during a skirmish, the soldiers panic. Zhou kneels beside him, pressing a hand to his wrist. Rest, Admiral. Even heroes must breathe. Zhou Yu's voice is hoarse but steady. I'll rest when his banner falls. Zhou studies him, the faintest sadness in his eyes. Then you may never rest. Cao Cao's retreat finally reaches the plains of Warong. The road narrows between cliffs, the perfect place for an ambush, if fate allows it. Exhausted and delirious, he laughs as his horse stumbles. Even the land wants my head, he says to no one. But the trap is already set. A southern detachment lies hidden in the mist, waiting for command to strike. The officer in charge hesitates. His orders from above have changed. A messenger arrives from Zhou himself. Let him pass. The soldiers stare in disbelief. Let him go. After all this, the officer lowers his blade. The strategist's word is law. Cao Cao rides through the mist, unaware of how close death brushed him. As he disappears into the distance, thunder breaks again, softer this time, almost like laughter. Later, when Zhou Yu hears the news, he is furious. You let him live. He demands, coughing blood. Do you know what we've bled for? Zhou tone remains calm. Yes, you've bled for history, not for revenge. The empire needs balance, not ashes. Zhou Yu steps closer, trembling with rage. You play with heaven as if it were chess. Zhou closes his fan. And you burn the board when you lose. The tent falls silent except for the rain outside. Two minds that saved the same land now stand on opposite sides of it. When night returns, the storm passes. The river gleams again, innocent, as if it never burned. Zhou Yu stands alone at the shore, the moonlight trembling across the water. He knows his name will live forever, but so will Cao Cao's, and Zhou. The South may have won the battle, but the empire is still divided, and legends have a way of breeding more wars. He lifts his face to the wind. It's cold now, northern again. Balance restored. The kind of wind that carries endings. But somewhere, a priver beyond the fog, a whisper still moves the promise of unfinished vengeance, and the echo of a river that once caught fire. Ashes echoes, and an unfinished warm morning rises pale over a broken empire. The smoke of Red Cliffs still stains the horizon like an old scar that refuses to fade. The wind has changed, cool now, northern again, as if heaven itself sighs after a night of too much fire. Zhou Yu stands atop a bluff overlooking the river that once saved him. Below, the water gleams gold in the dawn light, gentle and indifferent, erasing every sign of the inferno it carried days before. It looks peaceful now, as though nothing ever happened. He knows better. Peace is just the quiet face of exhaustion. He turns the pages of a battle report. The ink runs where rain touched it. Every line is loss dressed as victory. Half his officers dead. Thousands of men burned, drowned, or vanished into the fog. The enemy fled, yes, but so did half the South's faith in glory. History will call this salvation, he mutters. But salvation bleeds the same as defeat. In the distance, the surviving ships are being rebuilt. Sun Quan has ordered grand ceremonies to celebrate the victory. Poets sharpen their pens. Ministers prepare proclamations. But Zhou Yu cannot bring himself to attend. His mind remains chained to the river, to the screams that the water still remembers. When he closes his eyes, he hears them, the creak of burning timbers, the stampede of panicked horses, the whisper of chains snapping one by one. And beneath it all, the wind's laughter. The same wind that gave him victory and took everything else far to the north. In a half-ruined fortress beyond the marsh, Cao Cao sits alone. His armor is gone. His hands shake when he tries to pour tea. The once mighty warlord stares at the map before him, a burned scrap with holes where the river used to be drawn. His empire is fractured, his legend singed. Yet his eyes still hold that ruthless clarity. An officer enters quietly. "My lord, the men await orders. Shall we rebuild the fleet?" Cao Cao laughs, a sound brittle as glass. "Rebuild." He points toward the south. "How do you rebuild water?" He leans back and closes his eyes. "Let them believe I am beaten. Let them toast to their wind and their fire. While they celebrate, I will become something new. Fire dies, but smoke endures." He rises, his voice hardening. "Tell them this, Cao Cao is not defeated. He is waiting. In the south, victory brings more poison than pride." Rumors spread that Liu Bei's strategist, Zhu Yu, allowed Cao Cao's escape on purpose, that he plans beyond the alliance, beyond the war, beyond any man's trust. Zhou Yu hears the whispers. They burn hotter than the river ever did. He summons Zhuge Liang to his pavilion. The meeting is quiet, polite, and lethal in tone. "You let him live," Zhou Yu says flatly. Zhuge Liang smiles faintly. "You mistake restraint for weakness." "Restraint?" Zhou Yu's voice trembles. "You call sparing the devil restraint. I call it design," Zhuge Liang replies. "If Cao Cao dies too soon, the north collapses. Then chaos spills south again. The empire cannot balance on one corpse." Zhou Yu steps closer, his eyes sharp with fury and admiration both. "You think you can play gods and men alike?" Zhuge Liang folds his fan. "No, Admiral. I only play time, and time never loses." For a long moment, they stand there, the soldier and the sage, two minds, too brilliant to coexist. Zhou Yu finally speaks. "Someday, you'll find the one enemy even your mind can't defeat." Zhuge Liang bows slightly. "Perhaps. But not today." He turns and leaves, the faintest smile curling at the edge of his lips, the smile of a man who already sees 100 moves ahead. Zhou Yu watches him go, feeling both relief and despair. "You may have saved China," he murmurs, "but you've cursed it to remember you." That night, Zhou Yu returns to the shore. The moon lays a thin silver path over the river like the blade of a forgotten sword. He kneels, dipping his hand into the cold water. It feels the same as it always has, calm, indifferent, eternal. He whispers to the current, "You've seen too much, haven't you? Kings, empires, fools, pretending to be gods. And still you flow. Still you forget." But the river doesn't answer. It never does. It only carries reflections, not confessions. Behind him, footsteps approach. It's son Quan. The young lord's face glows in the moonlight. Older now, harder. "The empire knows your name. Zhou Yu," he says softly. "They call you the hero of Red Cliffs." Zhou Yu laughs, quietly, bitterly. "Heroes die young, my lord. Legends last longer because they lie." Son Quan lowers his gaze. "Would you have done anything differently?" Zhou Yu thinks for a long time. "No, but I'd have prayed less." Weeks pass. The alliance unravels as quickly as it was forged. Liu Bei's army marches westward, seizing lands that once belonged to others. Son Quan fortifies the south, claiming his dominion over the river. And in the spaces between their ambitions, the seeds of another war begin to grow. Zhou Yu, worn and coughing blood, watches it all unfold from his tent. His body has started to betray him, but his mind refuses to yield. He scribbles letters by candlelight, strategies, warnings, legacies. He writes of fire, of wind, of rivers, of balance. But most of all, he writes one question: how do you save a country that loves war more than peace? No one ever answers. In the northern plains, winter returns. Cao Cao rides alone through the snow, his breath fogging in the air. He stops at a ridge and looks south. Somewhere beyond the white horizon lies the river that humiliated him. He raises his hand, scarred, trembling, and closes it into a fist. "The fire is gone," he murmurs, "but the smoke still finds its way home." The wind shifts again faintly from the south. Months later, a messenger reaches the southern capital. He kneels before son Quan, eyes downcast. "My lord, Admiral Zhou Yu is dead." The words fall like stones in still water. The great mind of the river is gone. Outside, thunder rolls once soft, distant, like a drum echoing from the Yangtze itself. Zhuge Liang hears the news from afar. He stands in silence, then bows toward the river's direction. "Genius burns bright," he says quietly, but even fire bows to time. He opens his fan, feels the wind shift across his face. For a moment, it smells faintly of smoke. The story of Red Cliffs spreads across the empire, retold by poets, reshaped by soldiers, remade by time. Some say the gods turned the wind. Others say men did. But the truth lies somewhere between faith and strategy, between the hearts that fought and the minds that gambled. The battle saved China. Yes, but it also fractured it, setting the stage for the three kingdoms that would rise from its ashes. And the river that once caught fire would forever divide those kingdoms, not as a barrier, but as a mirror. It reflects every general who kneels before it, every dream that drowns within it. And if you stand quietly enough on its banks, you can still hear the wind whisper through the reeds, "I remember the fire." The river remembers spring, returns to the Yangtze. The reeds that once whispered of fire now bow under the gentlest breeze. Traders pass where warships once burned. Children skip stones where empires drown their pride. The river forgets nothing. It simply forgives slowly. Zhou Yu's ashes rest on its southern bank, carried in an urn of unpolished bronze. Soldiers, sailors, and poets visit, each leaving a handful of grain or a coin, payment to a man who taught the wind to obey. Some say that on still nights, when the mist rolls thick, you can hear him again, issuing quiet orders to a fleet of ghosts, his voice blending with the tide dot in the north. Cao Cao stands before his court, aged, unbroken. The scars across his hands shine pale in lamplight. The South thinks fire ended me, he tells his generals. But fire only purifies iron. They kneel, and he smiles. That calm, dangerous smile that no defeat can erase. His poets begin to write new verses, turning loss into prophecy. Even history bows before the pen of a survivor, and somewhere far to the west, under mountain mist, Zhuge Liang studies the stars. A candle flickers beside him. On his scrolls, the map of China stretches like a question yet unanswered. He marks 3 names upon it: Cao Cao, Sun Quan, Liu, Bei. He draws a triangle connecting them, the birth of the 3 kingdoms. His whisper fills the tent. The fire was only the beginning. Centuries pass. Dynasties rise, fall, and fade. Yet the story of Red Cliffs lives on, told in tea houses, sung by scholars, painted across silk scrolls and temple walls. Some versions say it was genius that saved the South. Others claim it was luck. But those who listen closely, who feel the breath of the river against their skin, know the truth. It was courage. The courage of men who stood before an empire and said no more when the wind shifts from the south. Fishermen sometimes glance upriver, as if expecting to see lanterns drifting toward them, small flames. Steady, undying, if they do, they bow. Because the river remembers. And every ember that once danced upon its skin still burns in the story of a battle that saved a nation and shaped 1,000 years of destiny, the END. The battle that saved China, Red Cliffs Inferno, 208 AD.